Quick greetings. Welcome to July. Um, we've had a very uh, productive June in terms of, I think I did 6 videos. So somehow, I guess the ancestor spirit hit, and there you have it. So today, where are we today? Well, we've been doing a lot of talk about the fact that we had no republic, right? So I guess it's kind of fitting that we might want to take a peek at where this talk of a republic might be coming from. So we want to look at the very first senator and representatives is what the article I looked up is titled. Now, I want to say this ahead of the game. Indians, I'm going to have to ask you to hold your peace and um, stay in your lane respectfully. Uh, as we look at these photographs and read these biographies, we're going to have a lot of moo really happy. The moo are the Moors. They're going to be like, see, I told that was you, that was we, that was us. And Indians really, it's going to be hard, Indians, because we're the ones who are desperate for identity, and the Moors are the ones so willing to give us theirs. So I'm going to ask my audience who have come to realize that they are Indians. Indians have a challenge from this moment on. Who's in the sound of my voice? The challenge is to stay in your lane. It has occurred to me just within the last less than an hour that one of the major derailing problems is that American Indians don't know the boundary between us and Negroes who are from Africa or Europe. We don't see the boundary, and we pay dearly for that. When we slip into their identity, we lose. That is just the beginning and end, beginning, middle, and end. As soon as we forget who we are, we lose. We now are turning over our individuality to meld with what they call free persons of color. This is where we get lost. We think we are free persons of color. And we said this before, and we'll say it again. There is no such thing as free persons of color in the Constitution. Guess who's mentioned in the Constitution? That's right, Indians. When you go to choose to be a free person of color, you have just made yourself uh, an unconstitutional entity, and you don't have an argument if you can't find your place, know your position in the Constitution. You really don't have anything to say. Indians have a lot to say because of what has happened to us. Free persons of color, if a legal professional is up on their game, they're going to say, what the hell is that? There's free persons, but free persons of color, oh, you want a caste system? Oh, so we got to go through civil laws and civil. Okay, so you making yourself a caste system of fiction. I mean, it's all fiction, ladies and gentlemen, truth be told. Everything but the real people of this land, the first people of this land, everything else is fiction. And that's why they fictionalized us. We can't even stay Indians in this system. They had to go ahead and fictionalize us. We're the only real thing mentioned in the Constitution. Not that we're going to keep that janky piece of paper. No, no. We were a separate government. Us being mentioned in the Constitution, it's like, say now we are in, what other country can we come up with beside the regular ones we always do? Maybe we should make up a fake country? Okay, say there's a country called Xanadu or something. Is there a real Xanadu in real life? Okay. So Xanadu has a constitution for Xanaduans. Xanaduans. In that constitution, they refer to their next door neighbor. Oh gosh, the Zootopians. Okay, the Xanaduans. They write in their constitution that the Zootopians are different people. We're not counting. That is the extent of our allegiance to the United States. It's just a mention in their document telling their people who we are. But then they go further and say that, oh, they're going to regulate the commerce that happens between Zootopians and Xanaduans. Then they end up taking over the entire landmass, forgetting that Zootopians are a separate nation. They say, oh, well, you're on this landmass, so can you be domestic dependent? Domestic what? Where's that at in the Constitution? Oh, we just made it up based on the doctrine of discovery. Oh. So the United States, unlike any other place on Earth, they feel that because we're on the same landmass, we should just meld into their United States. We was here before the United States, and we didn't invite them. Yet they're coming here, forgetting all their European, African, and Asian forms of sharing a landmass. Like we said, in Europe, Germans are German, French are French, English are English, and the two are three or whatever are completely independent of each other. There is no domestic dependency. Germany is not saying that England is domestic dependent because we're on the same landmass. Here in the United States, these niggers done lost their damn mind. These Negropeans done lost their mind. They got a whole new thing going on over here. They figure, well, let's do something new. We don't want to recognize you as a separate nation. How about you be dependent on us? How about is you stealing my resources that you are dependent upon and dependent on me not having control over them? How about that's what's really going on? How about that's why this whole thing needs to be scrapped? You've never respected an American Indian's right to even be your system is so over encompassing, you don't allow the very first people of this land to even have 1 square inch of it to themselves. That's why this system is unjustly. Okay, so we go off topic. So the fact that we're mentioned in the United States Constitution does not mean that they have jurisdiction over us. But they saw to it that we would be confused with free persons of color who they do have jurisdiction over. You see? Um, so what is this all to say? If Indians learn how to be American Indians and cut off all the extra noise that make you foreign, you are not a free person of color. When you are considered that, all we're doing is giving them more free reign on our land to masquerade as us. The thing that makes us different from Moors is that we can be here and don't have to be attached to this United States. They do. We read that they created the United States for themselves and their European offspring. The Mongolians are just here to somehow obscure that reality. So, since American Indians can't really tell the difference between themselves and free persons of color, we thought maybe we should just look at these free persons of color, you know, because they're not identifying as American Indian, even if they were. They drank the Kool-Aid, y'all. And we are drinking the Kool-Aid when we insist that we are free persons of color, and we're not. So we thought we'd like to start with the debate that took place. We're just going to peek at that debate that took place right before these Negroes got elected into Congress. Okay? So here's the debate that led to there being such thing as quote unquote Negro congressman. Now, again, in the Constitution, Indians don't have representatives in Congress. So for these Negroes to be in Congress, are they representing Indians? No, they are not. Who are they representing, ladies and gentlemen? They're representing foreign Negroes. So I guess if any of them are American Indian, they've abandoned their whole identity to be in a position where they think they have authority over Negropeans, but they don't realize what they did was put themselves on the same lower level as Negropeans, but they feel important because they in Congress now. Look, I'm in Congress now. So this was the debate after Congress went ahead. Ain't nobody asked them. After they just went ahead and what they do, the civil rights. Was okay? So it's the civil rights. So let's read this a little bit of this, right? Before we meet the League of Incredible Negroes, okay? The 14th Amendment as related to tribal Indians. Now, the 14th Amendment was for emancipated slaves, but Congress is so hot and ready to grab Indians that they have a 3-day debate on how they can wiggle Indians into this conversation about Negropeans and Caucasians and them. So they had to have a debate. Now, mind you, Indians didn't ask them to talk about them. Indians didn't ask them to be part of this 14th Amendment. Congress went ahead and did that on their own, okay? In a country of representation, They just went ahead without anybody asking them to represent them and said, well, we're going to emancipate these Negroes, whether they like it or not. But we figure if we treat them bad enough in these this indentured servitude, they'll come running once we say, oh, look, we got you a citizenship too. Look, look. And as we said before, ladies and gentlemen, it is still holds true. The United States citizenship was for slaves, whereas the state citizenship was for free persons, not free persons of color, free persons. Okay? Free persons of color, there's no such thing as a free person of color in the Constitution. There's just free persons. So that rules out, basically, it rules out um, Indians. Indians are not free persons. They're Indians in the Constitution. Look it up. There's Indians, not taxed, and then there's free persons. Look it up. Two different entities completely. Although they look, well, no, I can't say look the same. Free persons can be black or white, apparently. But you know, they had to make their constitution look non-biased, you know. So the 14th Amendment, as related to tribal Indians, Section 1, subject to the jurisdiction thereof, and Section 2, excluding Indians not taxed. They were infatuated with these terms because they had to find a way to ignore them. And ignore them, they did. Somehow, after they got the 14th Amendment, they figured that they don't have to go by. Now, the 14th Amendment is an amendment. They took an amendment to get rid of the main text of Article 1, Section 2, Clause 3. Indians not taxed. Indians not taxed is not an amendment, y'all. The 14th is an amendment. It's an amendment. So the thing that has the heftier weight would be the actual main text, like Article 1, Section 2, Clause 3. But these bastards were so hell-bent on ignoring Article 1, Section 2, Clause 3 that they used the 14th Amendment to say, oh no, once we had the 14th Amendment, everybody was subject to tax now. But this was about emancipated slaves, right? How? Emancipated slaves are not Indians not taxed. But you seem to want to bring them together. Why? Because they know that they're turning Indians who were made to be indentured, they're turning them into African slaves. So that's why it was so important to have Indians mentioned in the 14th Amendment when they shouldn't have been. Why they shouldn't have been? Because we say it all the time. They had a standing. It was called Indians Not Taxed. The United States used an amendment to erase what would have been or should have been a lawful legal standing as a separate nation of people. They erased a nation of people by creating a 14th fucking amendment. They are so sloppy when you really see how they're operating. When I say sloppy, you have to ignore an article in the Constitution with an amendment. Any amendment should fall in line with any article because the article is the main document in the damn Constitution. How are you going to make up an amendment that overrides the fucking text of the damn Constitution? It pisses me off, ladies and gentlemen, because these folks come off as so righteously legal, like they care about legality. Yet you have to cut out a whole article so that you can grab a separate nation, or what was supposed to be a separate nation, into your nation and then just abuse them. What, how did I get better treatment in your system when now I'm just what, bound to your public debt that I can't question? That's part of the 14th Amendment too, ladies and gentlemen. The part where you can't question the public debt. So that $38 trillion and rising debt, we always say, because people need to see the dollars and cents of it all. You so busy trying to be a 14th Amendment. Do you know that there's a freaking debt on your back that you can't question? Indians are not part of that shit. But they just had to add Indians not taxed to the 14th Amendment. For what? Indians had a standing. Slaves did not. And if you wanted to give slaves a standing, just make them citizens of whatever state they're in. No, the District of Columbia comes and grabs the slaves. Now the District of Columbia, which is not even a state, has citizens. What are they using them for, ladies and gentlemen? As employees. They see the slaves as their employees. But they're using them as debt slaves because you cannot question the public debt. That's, um, I believe, what do they call it? It's the fourth part of the 14th Amendment, Section 4 or something like this. So anyway, let's look. Okay. The phrase excluding Indians not taxed appears in both Article 1 that they ignore and the 14th Amendment. Why are you lumping Indians with African slaves? Because that's what the United States does when they're genociding on paper. That's what they have to do. The phrase excluding Indians not taxed appears in both Article 1 and the 14th Amendment of the U.S. Constitution. This essay examines the phrases excluding Indians not taxed and subject to the jurisdiction of sections. Why? You're dealing with slaves who don't have a standing because you're saying they're from Africa. Why are you mixing them in a conversation about Indians when the Indians didn't even ask you to you don't represent Indians. So why are you talking about them? It says Indians are not taxed, not represented, not counted. Why are these senators even talking about Indians, ladies and gentlemen? They don't represent them. So what are you doing? Why are you talking about mentioning them? They didn't ask you to be mentioned in a damn 14th Amendment dealing with actual slaves, well, mythical slaves, we should say. Okay, so this essay examines the phrases excluding Indians not taxed and subject to the jurisdiction of sections 1 and 2 of the 14th Amendment as they apply to Indians. Why are you talking about Indians? Nothing in the 14th Amendment should apply to Indians because Indians don't need a citizenship. These senators had to know this. This essay, through analysis of constitutional and legislative history, will demonstrate that tribal Indians were no. They keep trying to tell us that these were tribal Indians. They were not. These were the Indians that basically took allotments. Wait, what year is this? 1866? Okay, so maybe this might be before the allotments. But what it was is these were Indians who were no longer in tribes. They were just in the state. And that's why the state had to, they had to, well, the Constitution is recognizing that there are Indians, remnants of uncivilized tribes, still scattered in the states. So that's why they said don't count them. If they were on tribal land, as we said before, ladies and gentlemen, the census wouldn't even go to that tribal land because Indians are not taxed. So how could this be tribal Indians, ladies and gentlemen? They're talking about Indians that are randomly in the states, but not subject to the jurisdiction of the United States. Well, when you take over my land, I might still be on it. Although you're insisting that I don't exist, there I am. So now you got to find a way to make me melt into your little state system because you refuse to see me as a sovereign due to your doctrine of discovery, free meal ticket. This see this is the flim flam, ladies and gentlemen. They're trying look, Indians not taxed. It didn't say they were Indians and tribes. It simply said Indians not taxed. In fact, that is the first mention of Indians, and they don't mention tribes in the first mention of Indians. So really, they're dealing first and foremost with anyone who's an Indian, but not necessarily in a tribe. Why? Because Article 1, Section 2, Clause 3 does not say Indians in tribes not taxed. It says Indians not taxed. It says nothing about tribes, ladies and gentlemen. So this is all a psyop where they're insisting that, oh, but it means tribal Indians. No, the fuck it doesn't. They trying to say the only way you are an Indian not taxed is if you're a part of a tribe. Well, you broke up our tribes, remember? You even stopped doing treaties at some point. So you're little by little just dissolving tribes. And you only want to talk about the civilized ones because they're under your thumb simply by being civilized. When you say Cherokee, the government automatically knows, oh, those, yeah, yeah, they're not, they won't say it to your face, but they'll know that those are the Indians that we made over. Yeah. So no, they're not entitled to anything. They're creations of the federal government. This government does not want to deal with uncivilized Indians, so they simply tell themselves that they must be from Africa. The government tells itself that, oh, all we see is civilized Indians. If there's any other, they must be from Africa. That's what this government does. And people really think that if they have a republic, it's going to work out for them. There was no republic ever intended for American Indians to be a part of. So this essay, through analysis of constitutional and legislative history, what history are they talking about, ladies and gentlemen? They're talking about the John Marshall cases where the judge made up stuff that has absolutely nothing to do with the Constitution. Yeah, that's the legislative history they're talking about. Federal Indian law, really meant for civilized Indians. But they'll grab anything to lump them together so they can swat them all out at the same time, if we allow it. Indians, you cannot be free persons. Anywhere there's a gray area, you better ungray it and choose to be an Indian. No matter how good it sounds to be a free person, trust me, it is not good. Trust me, it is not good. This essay, through analysis of constitutional and legislative history, the federal Indian laws, Peter Dorico calls them the federal anti-Indian law. We say it all the time. Got to be repetitive. That's how we got here. They repeated bullshit to us till we took it like it was the truth, like we're domestic dependents, like we're Negroes, like we're colored. So they're saying this essay will demonstrate that tribal Indians. No, it won't. Indians not taxed are not tribal. It didn't say they were. So you can't put words in the Constitution that are not there. Indians were purposely excluded. Then why did you mention in the 14th Amendment? If they're excluded, don't mention them. How about that? And they never consulted Indians, ladies and gentlemen. These are men in Congress. To talk about Indians, you would have to be representing them. You're not representing them. Why are you talking about them? Because you're taking the role of guardian over. That's what you're doing. Then there's our wards. We got a right to talk about our wards. The drafters of the 14th Amendment clearly defined tribal Indians as no, they didn't. Even in the 14th Amendment, they don't say uh, Indian tribes not taxed. They say Indians not taxed. The drafters of the 14th Amendment clearly define tribal Indians as Indians not taxed. This is what they keep pushing, ladies and gentlemen. Right now, that's a psyop. They keep insisting that clearly defined tribal. No, it didn't. Get yourself a copy of the 14th Amendment and tell me if it says anything about tribes. Or does it say Indians not taxed? As not subject to the jurisdiction of the United States. All Indians were part of tribes, ladies and gentlemen. Okay? So none of them should be subject to the jurisdiction of the United States. Right? But the jankiness of the system, again, they are really talking about civilized tribes. They know that they have jurisdiction over civilized tribes automatically by virtue of they were created by the federal government. Before the United States was here, we didn't call our tribes civilized tribes. Once we're called civilized tribes, as we're being uh, basically under siege, that means you have been sieged. You are now something else. You're not an Indian. You're a civilized Indian, meaning you don't count as a sovereign on your land. You are now a little product of the invading nation. Right, Britain? The drafters of the 14th Amendment clearly define tribal Indians as Indians not taxed, as not subject to the jurisdiction of the United States. This essay delineates the jurisdictional links between taxation and citizenship. They should have been talking about emancipated slaves, not Indians. That alone tells you that this is going to be like a bullshit roller coaster. Um, this essay delineates the jurisdictional links between taxation and citizenship and discusses how the courts have repeatedly misconstrued the pertinent phrases. Solid arguments will verify that acts which impose citizenship on all Indians, contrary to the 14th Amendment prohibition against tribal Indian citizenship, are unconstitutional. Now that sounds interesting. Solid arguments will verify that acts which impose citizenship on all Indians, contrary to the 14th Amendment, prohibition against tribal Indian citizenship are unconstitutional. Okay, so they're just saying. But the United States citizenship was forced on Indians. They didn't have a choice. It was that, or basically they're saying we're gonna, leave you to be all kinds of terrorized, you know, in this indenturehood and act like we can't do nothing. So the United States basically saying, in order for us to help you, you got to become a 14th Amendment citizen. Again, why didn't you just give them state citizenship? Well, apparently, ladies and gentlemen, we said this before and we never followed up. It's looking to me like the South really didn't have citizenship. Uh, it was like the 14th Amendment was forced on the Southern states. So it's just that weird thing that comes up every now and then when I realize that practically no one in the South was, they couldn't have been state citizens because then they wouldn't need the 14th Amendment citizenship. You see what I mean? So we said this before, we never follow up, but apparently there were no citizens in the South. There was no state citizen and there was no United States citizens in the South. And we just got to put those pieces together because, again, if they were state citizens in the South, remember, Virginia is a southern state. It's considered a southern state once it is broken up into the 50 states. It is really a southern state. And the Powhatans were southern Indians, southern Algonquins, as well as my Indians, the Wayapemiyak. So we were southern states that did not have citizenship for anybody that was an Indian. But they started terrorizing us to identify as Negro, colored Negro. And then suddenly now they have a problem because none of these colored Negroes are citizens. So they got to say we're all, how they, instead of saying we're the owners of the land, they choose to say we were just slaves from Africa. Um, yeah. So they needed to be able to lump us all together to erase us as American Indians. That's why we can't afford to share that legacy, that birthright with free persons of color, Indians. When you get on your platform, those who may not be aware, the ones who are doing this and know exactly what they're doing, of course, we're not talking to them. But Indians, you have to draw a line. Never, never, ever confuse yourself with a free person of color. It was done, I think, as a means of feeling like you had a solidarity with all everything that's Negro. And it's just not the case. You are not like every Negro because you have a birthright and every Negro does not. Some of these Negroes know for damn sure that they were subjects of Britain. If Indians keep bleeding into these other factions of Negroes, you're never going to be able to stand alone because you're always going to be bringing some free person of color baggage, telling their story as if it's your story. What is your story? Well, that's what we try to talk about in every video. Your story is you were a people that were invaded from the time of Columbus and made wars, basically permanent. Look at Dum Diversas, the doctrine of discovery. You are permanent slaves, nothing else. Do not let the United States fool you into thinking you're a free person of color because you have even less rights as a free person of color on this land. You better be an American Indian and you better cut all that black fat off. So they're saying Indians were not supposed to be citizens. He just said it right here. But if we turn them into color, they can be. But if we say that they're free persons of color, they can be citizens. So that's how they solve that problem. They keep saying Indians are not supposed to be taxed. Indians are not supposed to be taxed because they know damn well they're going to fix it where all they're going to talk about is free persons of color. All they're going to ever tell us the history of is free persons of color. They're going to act like Indians don't exist because there's Native Americans now. Well, they weren't here now. They didn't exist in this in 1866. They didn't come around until 1960. This government is really sliding on like thin ice to tell these lies that don't make no damn sense. So finally, this essay substantiates that Indians not taxed was defined to mean that tribal Indians, no, it didn't, it just said Indians not taxed, are not taxable as long as they remain subject to the jurisdiction of their tribe. So they're trying to say that we better be part of the civilized tribes. Let me tell you something. American Indians don't have to be part of nothing. All they got to do, like they say, like Negro Peons say, all I got to do is be black and die. Well, all American Indians got to do is be American Indian and take their land back. That's all they got to do. They got to stop being taxed. They got to stop paying for shit because everything's been stolen from you and everything is owed to you. So Indians not taxed was defined to mean that no, it wasn't tribal Indians. I'm never going to, I can't even read that without stopping. They trying to say you got to be in a tribe. So what's the other choice of tribes, ladies and gentlemen? Civilized tribes. So what they're saying is we fixed it where everywhere you go, you're going to get fucked over. We're not allowing you to be uncivilized. And if you're an Indian not taxed, we're just going to ignore that and say that meant tribal Indians. It says Indians. Read it for yourself, ladies and gentlemen. They're quoting Article 1, Section 2, Clause 3. That's what it says. Does it say Indian tribes not taxed, ladies and gentlemen? No, it doesn't. So how are you going to define that to mean tribal Indians? Because you're lying, deceiving, what you do best. Yaku. It doesn't mean tribal Indians. And if I'm an American Indian, I don't have to be in a tribe to be respected as an American Indian. No foreigner gets to come here and tell me how I be Indian. Okay? I don't tell you how to be foreign. You don't tell me how to be Indian. But I will tell you this, you need to take your stank ass home. I will tell you that. You into running things so bad, go home. You got a whole house to run over there, up in somebody else's house, telling me that I have to be part of a tribe after you actively broke them up and say they went extinct and all this bullshit and replace us with Native Americans. You get to tell me what kind of Indian I could be while you trying to make me anything but. Or unless your everlasting minds. That's why it ain't gonna last. Oh, as we speak, ladies and gentlemen, they upheld birthright citizenship. Oh, whoop-de-doo. Whoop-de-doo. What is birthright citizenship? Again, it's a citizenship for slaves. Yet everybody's happy that they upheld it. So they roll in some slaves that they can pay less than their free persons of color. And what happens to all the happiness when you realize you're allowing them to keep a slave class citizenship so they can invite every Tom, Dick, and Harry and undercut your ass in wages? So it's like y'all agree that we could have slaves. Thank you. Slaves are a lot cheaper than your fancy Negro ass. So thank you. We'll invite some more third world folks that just think making what would almost seem like $2 I don't know, an hour. That's a like they feel like that makes them a millionaire. That's exactly who we want. We like them dumb and poor. That's how we like our United States citizens, and programmable. So whoop-dee, they get to keep slaves for the District of Columbia because United States citizens are not part of the states. They go straight to their ward master guardian subjects to a British territory. That's yeah. Of course, the Supreme Court is going to vote for that. So, okay, so the only place these phrases are defined in a constitutional setting is in the 1866 debates related to the 14th Amendment, as recorded in the Congressional Globe. Extensive quotations and context are necessary to assure authentic representation of the drafter's intent. So this was published. Uh-oh, first yawn. We didn't even get to look at the what do we call the League of Incredible Negroes. Oh my gosh. And we already yawning. That's how enthusiastic we are about these folks. Okay. So this was recorded in the Globe, the Congressional Globe. What? Congressional Globe, 1866. Okay. So the Civil Rights Act of 1866, congressional debate. So they're debating about slaves, but they can't stop talking about Indians because they know that that's who they're really uh, targeting. Okay. Congress first granted full citizenship to former slaves with the Civil Rights Act of 1866. It's so funny, because ladies and gentlemen, I'm sorry, I'm slurring my words. Uh, it's like it's like the South was trying allegedly to not be part of the bullshit, and uh, then they are forced to put the 14th Amendment in their state constitutions. So again, an example of folks that didn't want a 14th Amendment, but boom, Merry Christmas. The South didn't want no damn 14th Amendment citizenship. They weren't fighting for citizenship. That was a condition of their being reaccepted into the janky, stanky, greasy, grimy union. It's like, so you surrendered, huh? Okay, so you want to come back to Big Daddy? Well, there's only one condition. You got to accept the slavery citizenship I created for you. Yeah. I want you emancipated from private slavery into public debt slavery. And aren't I wonderful and marvelous? Don't you like that? So I'm pulling you out of quote unquote indenturehood come slavery because they just like to, they want to see us as slaves, ladies and gentlemen. So they don't like the word indenture because that implies that it was some kind of working off a debt, but Indians don't owe shit. That's the problem with that. And remember, they knew us to be slaves due to the doctrine of discovery. So they figure, well, let's tell them that they indentures, but all the while we just gonna see them as whole complete slaves on the down low. Now it's just a matter of psyoping them into believing that they didn't pay off their debt, so now they gotta lose their land. And but never worry, never fear. I got a United States Constitution, a civil, sorry, U.S. citizenship here, my dear. So run to Papa. He got a new citizenship he created just for you. Just for you. Ladies and gentlemen, when Congress or the Supreme Court comes up with something that you never saw in the Constitution, watch out. It ain't gonna be good. What do you mean it's not in the Constitution? Well, before the amendment, the 14th Amendment, they there wasn't this slave citizenship. So I guess I should rephrase that. When they create a janky amendment, but it says clearly that you can't question the public debt, it's know that it's not looking good for you. But still, I guess what I really am saying is for Indians, if they create a citizenship and you end up with it, that's unconstitutional for you because you had a standing as Indians, not taxed. I mean, yes, it's in their system, so it's a big red flag because they wrote that Constitution, and American Indians should be writing any if they're going to have Constitution. We done decided we don't need a Constitution. That just makes us looks like we part of England's little world conglomerate of bullshit that we don't want to be part of. Why don't we want to be part of England's system, ladies and gentlemen? As American Indians who have been misclassified colored, why do you think an Indian like me would say, I don't want to be part of a system that comes from England? Just look at our history and you'll get the answer why. No, that's why, right? You know that's why I say that. Because I know it has not done no good for no American Indian, and the same likewise for when they turned us colored. I mean, it's a lose-lose. So every time they look like they trying to do something for us, we end up still like they can't like it don't happen. It's not supposed to. Because as long as we are not American Indians, God only knows what they looking at us as, right? Well, they told us. Wards. Slaves and wards. Okay? Slaves and wards. I guess the Indians are the slaves and the free persons of color are the wards, but really it's just interchangeable. And the United States citizenship that everybody's so happy that the Supreme Court upheld. Now you're going to have a bunch of foreign slaves coming in. And again, they're going to get jobs and get paid less, and you're going to get basically eked out of the deal. So how dare you want to make money that you could live in your country with when we could make room for these nice poor immigrants who ain't ever had nothing, and we here to give them a little something, something, and tax the fuck out of them too. So who gets the real benefit of citizenship? That'd be the feds. Did I say something wrong? Come on, feds. Y'all know what time it is. Stop playing with me. We're peaceful, but we got to tell the truth about what happened to American Indians because it's unconstitutional, number one. And number two, even if it was constitutional, it's still a seizure of land. The Constitution is just a nice little piece of sweet little piece of paper that gives them the right to seize our land. And so, well, any way they can figure out how to do it and make it still look like we are what, free persons of color? What happened to the American Indians not taxed? Oh, they said that clause was made obsolete once the 14th Amendment came around. Did Indians ask to be part of the 14th Amendment? No, they didn't. So then how did they become part of the 14th Amendment and that whole citizenship bullshit when they're not citizens and don't have to be? Oh, the doctrine of discovery made that possible. Oh, right. Civil Rights Act of 1866. So this, ladies and gentlemen, is what made it possible for the League of Incredible Negroes to exist that we're going to take a look at. Okay, the League of This must be who they talk about when they thought they had a republic. They thought they had a republic. Yeah, Indians were not even part of the system, as we showed and proved with our no republic chart for 208 years. Now, in that video, ladies and gentlemen, it was a little bit confusing because we had the arrows that were between the Algonquin and the Iroquois, right? But the arrow should have not stopped at the Iroquois because the Iroquois did not have a republic. The chart is a little bit misleading because the 208-year period between Algonquins and the United States Republic of 1789, the arrow should have been between those two. It shouldn't have stopped at the Iroquois Confederacy because the Iroquois Confederacy did not have a republic either. So that was a little misleading in that chart. And I realized I kept talking out of turn saying, oh, the 208 years is from the Algonquins to the Iroquois. No, it's from the Algonquins to 1789 official start date of the republic. So Congress first granted full citizenship to former slaves with the Civil Rights Act of 1866. The act also excluded tribal Indians from citizenship. Asking to be citizens, you didn't have to exclude us. You just wanted us to be in that damn 14th Amendment. That's what, so you could start working your little badge. During the debate, excluding Indians not taxed was defined to mean tribal. See, in the debate, it was defined, not in the Constitution. So they keep trying to make it that it's tribal Indians. In other words, they're saying, we don't want your Indian ass to be an Indian. If you are by yourself and not part of a tribe, we're going to call you black. So you better be part of a tribe in order to be an Indian. Again, no foreigner gets to come and take my identity away to suit their thievery endeavors. But that's what they're doing until we stop being free persons of color and stop mixing and matching our identity with Negro peons. That Moors are not helping us to do that. They are the Negro peons that want the lines to be blurred. So they get to yap, 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 yap And all the yapping they doing while we listen to them ain't doing shit for ourselves as American Indians, not that. But they're advising us to work in this system that we are not even represented in. How do I get represented in a system that I'm not supposed to be represented in more? It's by keep listening to your bullshit. That's how. You telling me that I'm like you, a free person. That is your biggest dream to be me, right? So you never have to deal with us as American Indians because we would have the authority over you. We say it all the time, ladies and gentlemen. So during the debate, excluding Indians not taxed was defined to mean tribal Indians. Yeah, right. Foreigners, those who are not part of our people, and people excluded from U.S. citizenship and enumeration, thus all of whom were not taxable according to the ideology of 1866. The act was passed by Congress and vetoed by President Andrew Johnson. Congress overrode the veto. General understanding concluded that the 1787 Constitution excludes slaves, Indians, and other non-whites from citizenship. See how they saying it's like general understanding? But when you read the Constitution, it does not say that slaves are excluded from taxation. It does not say that. They said general understanding concluded that the 1787 Constitution excludes slaves. No, it didn't. It said that they were counted three-fifths. It didn't wait, exclude. Oh, from citizenship. Well, wait. A slave wouldn't really need a citizenship. You see, they're like property. They're not. It's like giving your cow citizenship. So no, they're gaslighting us. If there were slaves here, they would not have been considered citizens because they would have rights. Slaves, again, are like cows. Do you give your cows citizenship, ladies and gentlemen? No. Property doesn't get citizenship. So here they're just talking some BS, but it was only Indians who were not considered citizens. Slaves didn't, they were property. Indians were not property. But what they did, I believe, was say if you were an Indian that was in an indenture, their job was to make you a permanent slave, even though indenturehood is temporary. Indentured servitude is temporary. It's about 7 years. But what they would do is, just like they mentioned in their scripture, when Jacob was working for Laban, and I think what it was, Laban kept working him, making him work extra. Like he finds something wrong to make him work longer and longer and longer, whatever, to get the wife that he wanted, Rachel and Leah and all of that. So that's what they did with American Indians. They write their little scripture and then they put that on us. And we are the whipping boy in scripture, basically. We're the ones that get God's beaten, while the chosen, who they calling the chosen, they just read about bad things happening, but in real time, it's the whipping boy is getting all of that, and it's long lasting. Our genocide, some people call it our Holocaust. It was from 1492 to today and counting. That's the American Indian genocide / Holocaust. It doesn't end. I mean, I'm not trying to compare trauma. I'm just saying, uh, thankfully, you know, some horrors do come to an end, but not so for the American Indian. But that's why we can't afford to be persons of color because they have a different story. They don't. Their shit begins in the 1600s. Our shit goes back to 1492 because we're Americans. Negropeans, they trauma. All we know is that it happened allegedly in 1619. So when Indians uh, uh, consider themselves free persons of color, they are denying like half of their Holocaust. They're, they're denying they're ignoring the fact that American Indians as a whole have been terrorized much more than free persons of color. So you cheat yourself by identifying as a free person of color that's also not mentioned in the Constitution. Indians are in the Constitution. But if we keep confusing ourselves with free persons of color, we disappear from the Constitution. We get lumped with free persons that could be from anywhere. So you're genociding yourself when you become a free person because basically, again, there's no free person of color mentioned in the Constitution. Indians, not taxed, are. And so we have an argument and we have a gripe that because of the degree of what is the degree of the crime committed by the United States corporation. The crime is by ignoring Article 1, Section 2, Clause 3, you get to stomp all over us as a people. You don't have any limits in how far you'll go to disenfranchise, to uh, interfere with our biological property, you might call it. We don't like the word property. Because you have made us a non-entity. When you ignore, again, an article for an amendment, race us as sovereigns. But, ladies and gentlemen, as we said before, the main document of our disenfranchisement is not the Constitution. In other words, if we only focus on the Constitution, we still have a fight on our hands. But if we go to the origin, which is the doctrine of discovery, which has already been repudiated, that's where we start to win. That's where we start to win. That's the origin of our discontent, not the Constitution. The Constitution is a symptom. The doctrine of discovery is the disease. Deal with disease, you get rid of symptom. That's why the Constitution is not, that's not our document, ladies and gentlemen. We are not bound to that. We're not bound to it because we were never seen as sovereigns. who agreed to something. We were seen as wards who had no choice but to go with their constitutions and their whole system of English law. We are peaceful American Indians, but we have to speak our sovereignty because it is there. It is owed to us. It is our birthright. And the longer we deny, the longer we are subjugated. So the act was passed by Congress and vetoed by President Andrew Johnson. Congress overrode the veto. General understanding concluded that the 1787 Constitution, it does not exclude slaves. Well, slaves wouldn't be counted anyway. Indians and other non-whites. That's not what it says, ladies and gentlemen. The Constitution does not mention whites, does not mention blacks. It is actually frightening reading this now. It really is. Little by little, your eyes, this writer is telling us that the Constitution excludes non-whites from citizenship. It does not say that in the Constitution, ladies and gentlemen. This is how a republic works. Take note. And you didn't create it, so you shouldn't have anything to do with it. You better not have anything to do with this. Because if it attaches to you, American Indian, you legitimize it. You gotta stop attaching yourself to free persons of color and janky constitutions and everything else that they use you to be the gateway for or with or whatever. No. I'm just in shock at how he's reinterpreting the Constitution here. I just didn't catch it before. Non-whites. It didn't say nothing about blacks or whites. So I'm telling you, when we start using those terms that are not in the Constitution, that's when the playing field is open for this corporation to just start playing chess with our ass. Once they make us black and white, we become part of their checkerboard, baby. And they just playing games with us. Have nothing to do with the Constitution. Not that that janky piece of paper is worth anything to American Indians. All it did was admit the obvious that we are the first people of this land. And then they just, misclassified us. Poof. Problem solved. The Indian problem solved. Kill the Indian and what? Save the man. That's what they was doing up in here. So that's why Article 1, Section 2, Clause 3 became obsolete. They said that article is obsolete. What else are they gonna make obsolete? That's why we don't need the damn piece of paper. You going around making it obsolete. That shit it ain't gonna work in your favor. It ain't gonna work in your favor. So we just gonna say, well, hey, if you can take away part of it, you might as well take the whole thing. Because you done changed the whole direction of this uh, whatever this shit is. Most see, look at the language, ladies and gentlemen. General understanding. Most legislators believed that a constitutional amendment would be necessary to grant citizenship to former slaves. So they didn't consult the slaves. See, most legislators believed that a constitutional general understanding mm, mm, constitutional amendment would be necessary. We really got to zoom in on this, ladies and gentlemen. Again, there was already a citizenship in each state. If you wanted to do right by your imaginary slaves, Just allow them to be citizens in the state, not a citizen to the District of Columbia. That ain't helping them. That's making them debt slaves to you, District of Columbia. And they say the state national say the District of Columbia is a British territory. So that seems to me that once you become a United States citizen, you are a British subject. I told them in my declaration, I'm not a citizen, though. I don't belong to the kings or queens of England. I'm not their property. Okay. Most legislators believe that a constitutional amendment would be necessary to grant citizenship to former slaves. Within a few weeks, the same Congress constitutionalized the act through the 14th Amendment, because the act and the 14th Amendment, the Civil Rights Act and the 14th Amendment, are inextricably bound together. The intent expressed in the act mirrors the intent of the 14th Amendment. Or, the Civil Rights Act of 1866 was first debated in the Senate on January 30th, 1866. Within moments of the bill's consideration, Senator Van Winkle addressed the bill's constitutionality. Following Senator Van Winkle's remarks, the Senate immediately began a debate that lasted 3 days on the status of Indians. Mind you, ladies and gentlemen, Indians are not represented in Congress. Again, why are they having a debate about Indians? You don't represent them. Why are you talking about them? Why are you wasting your taxpayers' money talking about Indians that are not paying taxes to you for you to represent them? Huh? I think they use the indenturehood, ladies and gentlemen, of Indians as a means to count them as well. Like they were looking for any kind of way to pull us into their system. So by insisting that we were these slaves from Africa, they could then count us as, 3/5 or whatever. But you see, because we had a standing, none of that should have ever been done. In other words, if I'm an indenture, again, that's a limited time only. You don't need to be creating no citizenship for me. I got a standing. But you know what? I see how you operate, and now I'm just going for the gusto in a peaceful, loving manner. I'm not looking for correction in your constitution anymore. I'm looking for correction by challenging the doctrine of discovery, which has been repudiated. No more of these shenanigans that just lead to a lose-lose situation. You got to go to the disease, not the symptom. That's what it is, ladies and gentlemen. Whenever we get serious about this, we'll realize that's exactly what we have to do. We've been fighting Constitution for over 200 years. That's an ongoing fight that doesn't get resolved. Why? Because they've effectively, like they said with the Article 1, Section Clause 3, and it's not taxed, they made the Constitution obsolete. It's just there for like to induce people into an American dream, which means it's a sleep aid. Yeah, yeah. Um, it's obsolete because they've created new characters that are not mentioned in the Constitution, like blacks and whites who are not mentioned. So once they get us to identify as black and white, well, you're not a free person anymore. I would venture to say that you're you've been, the freedom part is no longer in effect. Now you're just a fictitious thing with no freedom because it's not, you're not calling yourself a free person. Now, this is for foreigners. Again, look at me helping them to uh, steal my land. How crazy that looks. But I'm telling this to Indians because I want them to see how they were eased out of any realm of being a legitimate entity in this system. They can do whatever they want. They can tell you what to do because you're not standing up and saying, first of all, I'm an American Indian, fictional, and you're trying to use the Commerce Clause as a means to hold jurisdiction. But even Clarence Thomas said that was that was a reach. He had to say that, ladies and gentlemen, because it's the truth. No Supreme Court justice would say that. I mean, granted, they won't do anything, but they would never say that unless it was true. He said that the United States took too much authority by misinterpreting the Commerce Clause. Regulating commerce with Indian tribes is a whole different thing from dominating everything, including commerce. That never happened. Dominating every aspect of an Indian tribe and those who are part of that Indian tribe. Now, Indians not taxed are not necessarily in a tribe. But this corporation says what they mean when we thought they meant they would oversee like trade and commerce between Indians and the states. No, they said we meant we're going to control everything that you do, and every option that you have is going to be dictated by us. You are a ward. That's how they interpret the Commerce Clause. Yeah. So they have a history of misinterpreting, misclassifying, redefining, creating new entities, anything and everything that can make the basically everything in the Constitution obsolete. So yeah, 3 days debating the status of India. Indians are not part, they don't need a status. What are you talking about? We had a standing, allegedly, as Indians not taxed. So we don't need your status or what is it for? Anyway, okay. We don't want to read everything. We just want to set the stage for how I guess what looked like a republic for Black folks, how it began. It began with this Civil Rights Act and then the 14th Amendment. Okay. But here's what they said. We highlighted the more profound things said about American Indians. So Mr. Davis said, my position is that this is a white man's government. It was made so at the beginning. The charters that were granted by different sovereigns of England to the various colonies were granted to white men and included nobody but white men. They did not include Indians. They did not include Negroes. It is a white population and not a Negro population or an Indian or a mixed population that is a truth of history. It is a truth of principle. Well, I would say to this, ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Davis is forgetting that he was a subject to England. When they granted those charters, it was to their subjects, not you as a free person. So you hear talking about how this wasn't for Indians and Negroes. Ain't nobody want that shit. That was for subjects. And truth be told, you are still a subject, and we just got grabbed into this shit as American Indians. So his position is that this is a white man's government. Uh, okay, once you break away, allegedly, from England, yeah, I mean, initially the flim flam was it was for free persons. The Constitution didn't say it was a white man's government, but his position is this is people in the Senate, y'all. How could your position be that this is a white man's government when the Constitution didn't say that it? Look, we don't want no part of it, ladies and gentlemen. What I'm trying to show you is how unethical this system actually is. That we put so much trust. How could this senator say that his position is that this is a white man's government? It's a subject's government. And then the subjects turn around and subjugate the people that basically helped them to live while they were here. They would have been dead. So his position is this is a white man's government. I guess by this time, the white population is just being deceived, just like everybody else is, into thinking that this was actually, but not according to the Constitution, is it a white man's government? It's just a free person's government. But American Indians, we don't need your government. You can create your government wherever you came from. And then you will have all the authority you need instead of having to deny me my entire for entire lifetimes my position so that you could be here talking about this is a white man's government. Well, take it to the white man's land. But please take these Negro Negropeans with you. Don't ever get that twisted. Don't ever get that twisted. We are not free persons of color. Moors are. Okay, so we want to get it. Now, he said Negroes, right? This is a good transition right here because next thing we know, there's some Negro senators. And this is what I think our people, again, because we don't know how to stay in our lane, we think this republic was for American Indians. So we see some black faces and boom, we've arrived. Yeah, you've arrived to your slavery. They gave you a slave class citizenship, and now they're going to give you some senators? How? Senators are for state citizens. If you are a citizen of the District of Columbia, how does that work? District of Columbia is not a state. They don't have elections in the District of Columbia, from what I understand, because it's not a state. I'm confused by that thing. Like I guess there would have to be some kind of dive done, be done. Look at me, I'm sleep talking. Some kind of dive done on that, but I do recall something about the quote unquote citizens in District of Columbia don't vote. Something they don't. It's weird, but it's not a state. They were there, according to the state nationals, to serve states, not to have citizens. It's almost like people shouldn't even live in the District of Columbia. District of Columbia. You know what I'm saying? Because it's not a state. But look at me trying to fix their system that was built broke, that can't never be fixed because it's built to make sure that somebody gets misclassified in order so that someone else can stand on their land. That's what this republic is about. For those who want a republic, that's the history of a republic in America. Okay. Everywhere else is just foreign. But in America, this is what a republic is about. Okay. It's foreign here too. Let's not get that twisted. So Mr. Davis said his position is that this is a white man's government. Well, it's a white status government, perhaps, but it doesn't even say that in the Constitution. So we all got tricked. His position is that this is a white man's government. It was made so at the beginning. Not true. You were subjects at the beginning. The charters that were granted by different sovereigns. Yeah, you were not one of the sovereigns of England to the various colonies. Uh-uh. Uh-uh. The charter was not for, it wasn't for the people of the colonies. It was for the King of England. That was his land. And you were like a serf upon it, paying to be there, slaving. He just needed you there to work those, crops or whatever. But ultimately, he would just misclassify Indians and have them working their own crops for the benefit of your king. Not you. You ain't nobody. It's you. You a subject, man. But y'all had the revolution where basically, I guess Indians must have helped you break away. You should have left that shit alone. Because look how you did American Indians. After had to break away from your oppression. It's a white population and not a Negro population or an Indian or mixed population. That is a truth of history. It is a truth of principle. Senator Johnson goes into a lengthy discourse on the Dred Scott case, quoting the court. Uh-oh, they talk about Dred Scott. Let's see what he say. Senator Johnson, come on with it. It is true that every person in every class and description of persons were at the time of the adoption of the 14th, the Constitution, recognized as citizens in the several states, became citizens of the new political body, but none other. It was formed by them and for them and their posterity, no one else. So he was quoting the Dred Scott case. Let's read that again. It is true, is Mr. Johnson, Senator, that every person and every class and description of persons who were at the time of the adoption of the Constitution recognized as citizens in the several states became citizens of the new political body, but none other. It was formed by them and for them and their posterity, but no one else. It sounds like he's saying, I really don't. I guess we'd have to. Uh-oh. See what they mean by this, but basically they're trying to say that they created this government after they got out of British control. But they did create this government, ladies and gentlemen. As we found out, Britain had a Bill of Rights before these folks had a Bill of Rights. They just mimicked. They did not, what do you say? Uh, a new political body? It wasn't new. It was an exact replica of what they had in England. They just renamed it. Like Parliament became Congress, and the House of Commons became, I believe, the Senate. Is that it? Or the House of Representatives? No, wait. Yeah, yeah. Parliament is Congress, and the House of Commons is either the Senate or the House of Representatives in America. But it's the exact same template. Only thing, in instead of being citizens, they were subjects in England. So they just took the same English model. See, these people, also don't have a concept of creation rights. You can't take something that you didn't create and then try to say that you created it. I mean, they did rename it. That's an important part of it. But they still rely on English laws. Like you would have had to rename it and then have a whole set of laws that have nothing to do with England, at the very least. I still think you're using a model that you shouldn't use because I believe that all of these models are either patented or copywritten, whatever they have to be owned by the nobility that created them. In other words, it's like having a franchise. You have to pay for the use of that franchise. It's not something you created. It's something you are mimicking. And for the privilege, I guess, of using that model, you got to pay. It's not yours exclusively. So I just think everybody in this system, they don't quite know how it works because in actuality, it was created by nobility for a purpose. And the purpose was not for free persons. It was not for freedom. No, no, no. That's why it just seems like over the years you just are losing freedoms. That's exactly this thing wasn't designed to be. It was like a big bait trap. That's all. Because the principles designed it a certain way. When you go to take something, you have to know every little part of it. Know, and the only way to do that is to create it yourself. This system we're in has a lot of parts that people just are not privy to. And they pop up when you hear somebody say, well, we went to Old English law. What the fuck is that? Where was that at, though? Um, you want a system, a legal system where you don't need to hire someone to interpret the law because you know it that well. And so that therefore it cannot be this whole slew of random contrary, conflicting codes, rules, and regulations. They got to be real simple. And it can be very simple. That's what it can be. Okay. You want a kind of country where everybody knows the law and it's not doesn't require you got to get a professional because you need to know it so that you can always protect your interest. And it cannot be a foreigner running. It just cannot be. It cannot be.
So it sounds like he's saying that, you know, it was formed by them and for them. I just can't agree with that because you can only do that on your landmass. You can't form something on somebody else's landmass and have it be legitimate. You were misled. That's all. You were misled. Okay, so I think, well, let's go to my favorite part of this because we want to always remind. Wait, did I highlight this? Where's my highlights? My highlights are not here. I really don't know. So my highlights have disappeared. Lately, I don't know, just seems weirdness be happening. I had many highlights in this document that I pulled it up specifically because of the highlights, and they're not here. But this is what I want to read. This is for the Indians. I just want to read this for the Indians because we read this all the time. We want to remind them the difference between a free person and an Indian. Mr. Trumbull says, my own opinion is that all persons born in the United States and under its authority, owing allegiance to the United States, are citizens without any act of Congress. The Indians have separate governments of their own. They do not recognize, nor are they made subject to the laws of the United States. So when you hear Indians wanting a republic, they're going against the intent of Article 1. See, he quotes Article 1, Section 2, Clause 3. Indians who say they want a republic are going against Article 1. They are helping the government to genocide themselves and to make them obsolete as a nation. The Indians have separate governments of their own. They do not recognize, nor are they made subject to the laws of the United States. They make and administer their own laws. This is what our association is. This is what we are working on. And I'm, not at liberty to give away too much, but this is how we're establishing ourselves as American Indians on this land. We are not seeking a republic because we don't want to cross wires. Cross wires and you lose your potency because your energy is going to go here, there, and across through Negropeans. It's going to charge them up. They're going to come and talk some bullshit to you like you are like one of them, a fucking foreigner, and you're going to lose your way. Fighting people on your panels, guiding you into being going against the even the Constitution that you claim to uphold in your republic, then why are you going against your Constitution? Your Constitution says that you're not represented in the republic. How many times do we have to say that? Well, we're willing to, as many times as spirit leads. So the Indians have separate governments of their own. They do not recognize, nor are they made subject to the laws of the United States. Now, this is a senator that's making sense. He is actually, this is what the Constitution intended. That other stuff we were reading about white men and all of that, nah, not really. Now, what he's saying here, this is actually the intent of Article 1, Section 2, Clause 3. This is the one article that the United States has made obsolete. Yeah. Um, the Indians have separate governments of their own. They do not recognize, nor are they made subject to the laws of the United States. They make and administer their own laws. They are not counted in our population. That means you're not enumerated in their censuses. They make and administer their own laws. They are not counted in a. That's what the Republic said about Indians, ladies and gentlemen. What we have today is Indians who are half free persons, and they're going to they're going to really pay the cost of being two things. They have to focus and recalibrate as American Indians and stand on business. But they keep saying that they had a republic. No way, because the republic said you're not even counted in their population. They are not represented in our government. Hello, they are not represented in our republic. That's what he's saying. And the Constitution of the United States is determining who shall be represented. I'm sorry. And the Constitution of the United States, the Republic, in determining who shall be represented, says Article 1, Section 2, Clause 3. So he's just quoting Article 1, Section 2, Clause 3. That says, representatives and direct taxes shall be apportioned according to the number of free persons, those bound to a number of years of service, excluding Indians not taxed. Now, when you hear that, it doesn't sound like much, but it's their convoluted, complicated way of saying that we're not counted. Representatives shall be apportioned among the several states by counting the whole number. I'm sorry, free persons, excluding Indians not taxed. Okay, it's I'm paraphrasing. So that's what he's referring to when he says Article 1, Section 2, Clause 3. Then he does ask the senator from Indiana, does the senator from Indiana want the wild roaming Indians? Hello, I don't want, yeah. Does the senator from Indiana want the wild roaming Indians not taxed, not subject to our authority? What? Not subject to what? The United States authority. This is what we need Indians to stand on, not these ones looking to be part of a republic, thinking that Trump is going to do something for them. He's going to take advantage of your profound ignorance. That's what he's going to do. And like the mother in Sparkle said, he's going to drag you in the church, in the mud, the gutter. That's what is going to happen to these Indians that don't know their place. Trust me, they have a place for you if you don't know yours. Uh, he says he's asking, does the senator from Indiana want the wild roaming Indians not taxed, not subject to our authority, to be made citizens of the United States? Persons that are not to be counted in our government? If he does not, let him not object to this amendment that brings in even the Indian when he shall have cast off his wild habits and submitted to the laws of organized society and become a citizen. So they're still hoping they're saying you're not part of it, but then they're going to act like, but if you do come part of it, it's like this great, the heavens open up and the wings come down and you're like flying and floating in heaven. Nah, it's more like hell. That's all we've ever seen when it comes to how we're treated. It's hell. Okay. So I kind of never took note of how Mr. Trumbull at the end of this otherwise pretty accurate statement. I I didn't take into account that at the end he's trying to say, well, our little citizenship is still the best thing that could happen to the wild Indian once he gets rid of his wild ways. Blah, blah. What they're saying is once you stop owning the land and become a foreigner like us, oh, that makes it so much better for all of us. That's why Indians better stay in their lane. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, we just wanted to get an idea especially I'm glad this part was highlighted actually. I guess this is why where is it now? It disappeared. Let's read it one more time. My position is that this is a white man's government. It was made so at the beginning. The charters were granted by different sovereigns of England to the various colonies. Uh, the charters that were granted by different sovereigns of England to the various colonies were granted to white and included nobody but white. He sounded more ignorant to me. They did not include Indians. They did not include Negroes. It is a white population, not a Negro. It's so interesting because this conversation is for emancipated Negro. Well, that's why they're making a 14th Amendment. See, the 14th Amendment is not putting you on the same level as these white people who had a different citizenship. They're creating a different federal citizenship for Negroes. So now, okay, so now it makes sense what he's saying. Okay, now it makes sense. Because yeah, they're actually consistent in the sense that the 14th Amendment was not the same citizenship white people had. Ladies and gentlemen, we must understand. Please listen at this very moment because it will help explain that there were two citizenships. As we said earlier, one citizenship was created specifically for slaves. This is the citizenship these men are talking about. But they had a citizenship. The men talking here, they had this Mr. Davis, Mr. Johnson, Mr. Trumbull. They were not United States citizens. They were citizens of the state. They are debating about a new citizenship that is a federal District of Columbia citizenship. So let's say that again. If you have a problem understanding that there's two different types of citizens, this is the best way to explain it. Mr. Davis, the guy we just read that's highlighted, do you think he's a United States citizen? Now he's in the Senate right now. To be in the Republic, you have to be a citizen. He is a senator. He is square in the Republic. What kind of citizenship do you think he had, ladies and gentlemen? Because they're just creating a United States 14th Amendment citizenship. So what does that mean? That means there was already another citizenship. What kind of citizenship was it? It was a state citizenship. It was a state citizenship, not a federal citizenship. It was a state citizenship. That's why he said the senator of Indiana, that senator of Indiana, he was a citizen, not of the United States. He was a citizen of Indiana. So we're just trying to show how this system, it sort of, when it created the United States citizenship, it created something specifically tailored for slaves, ladies. They did not emancipate slaves. They just shifted them into a different type of slavery where they had no land. When they were indentures, that land was theirs, y'all. I don't care what nobody said. That was their land they was working on. That was the whole point of getting them out of it. It wasn't to emancipate them. It was to take the land away from them. I think they were working them so hard that they just they couldn't get a break, y'all. I'm positive that they had quotas to meet, and I'm positive it was done in a way that they would never be able to meet those quotas. They worked long ass hours. These people were tired and worn out, and they still were not meeting their quota. They would take anything to get out of that situation, including this janky ass United States citizenship that only took advantage of them and their ignorance to this republic that they had nothing to do with. Okay. So now I think we want to just jump to the League of Incredible Negroes, not Indians. So we jumped from 1866 when that debate was taking place, and we heard what those senators were saying, to now 1872. So now the Negroes have been emancipated. Indians are giving up their identity, like the free cheese giveaway, because they can't imagine a life of picking cotton from sun up to sundown and getting paid practically nothing and then being told that you didn't pick enough. And if you want some machines to help you, that's going to cost you. And if you don't make the payment, you're going to lose your land. So Hiram Rose Rebels. So let's read this. These were the first colored senators and their representatives, circa 1872. This is from ChatGPT. And we did this yesterday, late yesterday. Now we're into July. But June 30th is when we first looked at this and saved it. Here is a biographical gallery with a portrait and summary for each of the 7 men featured in the 1872 print. I found a print with a picture of these men, and I wanted ChatGPT to tell me more about them. But remember, Indians did not have a republic. They were corralled into a 14th Amendment citizenship that was, they had no say in. It was an inferior citizenship compared to the ones that those senators had. Those senators were not United States citizens. They were state citizens speaking for each of their states. There is a huge difference between a state citizen and a United States citizen. One of the big differences that always gets my goat is the fact that those senators that we were just reading their little quotes, they were not bound to the debts of the federal District of Columbia. Nowhere was it written that their state citizenship made them debt slaves and they could not question the public debt. They didn't have that in their citizenship. United States, the Negroes, you were made the debt slaves of the United States. So what the United States was doing was creating a whole bunch more than 19 enumerated functions, and they were basically charging the Negro slaves. That's the only thing that makes sense. First of all, the state citizens did not ask them for more than 19 enumerated functions. That's all they were willing to pay for, and that's all they was going to pay for. They were not bound to any debts because they weren't expecting the federal government to rack up a fucking debt. But as soon as the federal government had United States citizenship, they made it their goal, if you ask me, to rack up that debt to keep these Negroes in debt so that they could say to themselves, well, even if they become like Indians, the debt that we're going to put on them, they can never pay it. So they can't get their land back if they owe us. But here's the thing. Indians will never owe invaders a damn dime. They can go into fantasy land to make like we owe them something. They know damn well we do not owe them anything. You got my land and resources in a fucking trust, and I'm here alive on this land. Why do you have my shit in a trust? Perhaps they want to say, well, if you don't pay this debt, we get to keep the trust. Nah, that's not going to happen. If Indians ever stand in the lane of American Indians and stop confusing themselves with free persons of color, it is the free persons of color that would owe that debt, y'all. Ultimately, American Indians don't owe anything. I'm sorry. We do own this land. We don't owe anything to this, not a state, not the federal government. They are squatting on our land for free. How the hell do I owe? So the first colored senators and their representatives, circa 1872, after those white men said, let's let a couple of Negroes in. I guess we got to do it. Uh, how else are we going to get them to pay our debts, the debts of the federal government? We need somebody to pay to be a debt slave. Here is a biographical gallery with a portrait and summary for each of the seven men featured in the 1872 print. This is Hiram Rhodes Revels. He, I guess, served from 1827 to 1901. So if he was an American Indian, he gave all that shit up to be part of a republic. Does he look happy? Hmm? Look like he got a sleepy eye. Oh, but let's find out about him. Oh, look, more pictures. Oh, he's so handsome, right? What a handsome sellout. Oh, yellow here. Look a little happier. Look like Cory Booker. Is this Cory Booker's great grandfather? This got a little bit of a Cory Booker look. Okay, so we got a gallery of incredible Negroes, right? Negroes, not Indians. There you go with that sleepy eye again. So we just show now. This is for the moo so they can be proud for a moment. This was the republics that you saw. These were the peoples that you saw in your republic that you weren't supposed to be in because you were Indian, not taxed, not represented, and not a citizen. You can't be in a republic with no citizenship, moo. You got to figure out which Negro you gonna be. Well, American Indian ain't really a Negro, but we look like them. So if you want to be a free person of color, then right now you jumping for joy. There's my hero, Hiram. Let's see about his background. Oh, wait, Honorable what? HR HR Revels, United States Senator elect from Mississippi. From Mississippi, see? Background: he was born free in Fayetteville, North Carolina. This is a Negro Pean. A Negro Pean if he born free. Educated in both the North and Midwest. A minister in the AME, Episcopal Baptical. What was that? Queen Latifah movie where she named every church. She said she was every member of every church. Baptical, ecumenical. Uh, she just named everything. But he's a minister in the African Methodist Episcopal Church. Definitely civilized if he was an American Indian, but born free. Hmm. Well, there were Indians who were uh like if you went with the Schedule One census. They were calling us free, but we were sovereign. But see, that's how they start to mix us with free persons of color. So he could have been an American Indian, actually. I could. They say he was born free. Well, again, I on my records, I didn't see any slaves. Uh, and they were there before Indian removal. So that's the Indians they were in the Wayapebiat nation in the area of Verona. So I'm sorry, I take that back. I was saying he was a Negropean. Well, he's following the life of a Negropean by, being a minister. He served as a chaplain for Black Union Civil War. So to be in the Republic, you cannot be an Indian. You see, none of the men we'll look at will identify as Indian. This is because Indians were not part of Republic. Historical significance. He was the first African American, see, to serve in the U.S. Senate, the first. He represented Mississippi from 1870 to 1871. So all this is taking place after Dred Scott. He advocated education, civil rights, and national reconciliation. So 1866 was the Civil Rights Act, I believe we read. And then in 1868 was the United States citizen. Okay, so that's Hiram. Hiram. I don't even know how to pronounce that. Let's do a little montage back of Hiram. He was the first, and they made sure he was all into the religion. So he was a minister. Hiram Rhodes Revels. Okay. He was the first senator, and it was in Mississippi. And to think that years later, Martin Luther King would have to go marching in Mississippi. And Mississippi was like a worst. That was the first place to have a Negropean figure. He wasn't, you see, to be in the Republic, you cannot be an Indian. You have to give that up if you are. That's why when you hear Indians talk about they want a republic, they are in serious conflict. They are in an identity crisis because they got Moors on their panel popping some bullshit. The Moors are encouraging you to not be an American, or he'll say you are, but encourage you to stay in the system, making you unconstitutional. Because per the Constitution, you are not represented in this republic. We'll say it a zillion times. Okay, so he was the first African American to serve in the U.S. Senate. Senate, sorry. He's a senator, but he was in the Senate. See, Indians are not in the Senate. That's why we're looking at this, ladies and gentlemen. We want to draw a line. When you get swept off your feet because you see a Negro like this one, and you say, that was us, think again. And this is one sad looking Negro, by the way. Maybe he knew he sold his soul. So, yeah, he looked a little happy. Maybe that's just the beginning. And this must be later on when he started to realize, oh shit, I done made a pact with the devil God. Yep, sure did. And we can avoid this if we get our freaking head on right. stop being two people that are in abject opposition to each other. You can't be a Moor and an Indian. You can't be a free person and an Indian at the same time. Indians are not senators. Sorry. I know you think that's an important position. Well, we read them senators, and for the first time, finally, it hit me how ignorant they were. At least the ones we read, and they flocked together. I mean, Trumbull had a little sense. So then we go to Benjamin Sterling Turner. He's 1825 to 1894. What was the other date again? It's 1825. This was the first one, and he was 1827. All right. Well, wait, 1827. Well, he's the first senator. 1820. This guy, the next guy, Benjamin, he's 1825. He's before. Well, let's see what he was. Benjamin Sterling Turner, 1824 to 1894. Look like the mean old line from the Wiz. If I were king and a senator, got double ugly. Well, that don't even look like him. Oh, they gave him a white man here. Well, wait now. What kind of hair we got going on? Uh, I'm getting Asiatic vibes. Asiatic. Okay, he was born enslaved in South Carolina. Oh, he was a slave. Hmm, interesting. Learned to read despite restrictions on educating enslaved people. Became a successful businessman after emancipation. You gotta get me. Benjamin. The first one was Hiram Revel. This is Benjamin Sterling Turner. Now he was born a slave, y'all, but he was an indenture, which means he probably had land. Family probably had land that they became indentures on. Slaves to the five civilized tribes. Remember, ladies and gentlemen, we got to put the pieces together. These men would have been slaves to the five civilized tribes. I believe they were Algonquins. I really do, ladies and gentlemen. I can't explain. But it doesn't make sense to me that the five civilized tribes would run their folks off the land. You see what I'm saying? The idea was to get rid of the landowners in the South. So, well, some people say that, they try to say that those were their family that they was working for. I don't know, there's something not right about that. And I think again, um, uh, this is just, that thing that happens in America where there's like always more than one version to a story. And right now, my head it's early in the morning. There's something weird about the South. I I just tend to think that Indians wouldn't have given up. I'm not sure we would have given up so easily. You know what I'm saying? Like we're the Indians that didn't leave on the Trail of Tears. I do believe. So emancipation basically, I'm. Is it emancipation that led to the migration? Let's look at when the Great Migration happened. Oh boy, I'm a little. It's early in the morning. Let's see. And was the Great Migration? Uh, oh, 1910 to 1970. The Great Migration took place from 1910 to 1970, with the most intense activity spanning from 1916 to 1970. During this period, approximately 6 million Black Americans relocated from the rural American South to urban centers in the North, Midwest, and West in search of better opportunities and to escape racial violence. Okay, so we did an off-camera search, ladies and gentlemen. The first Great Migration from 1910 to 1940, an estimated 1.5 to 2 million I'm sorry, 2 million Black Americans moved from the South to major industrial cities like Chicago, Detroit, New York, and Pittsburgh, drawn by wartime manufacturing jobs. Second Great Migration, 1940 to 1970. Over 3 million Black Americans relocated. This wave saw populations moving to cities in the West, such as Los Angeles, Oakland, and Portland, to take advantage of wartime defense jobs and expanding industry. Well, the time frame is, I don't know. It seems like so it's after emancipation, 1868. The Great Migration was like 1910. That is a while. That's kind of a big gap. Let's see. 1910 minus 1861. It was 42 years. 42 years after emancipation in 1868, people started leaving the South. Okay. Just trying to understand the dynamics. So indenturehood is kind of destroyed. But there's to see, here's the thing. I guess I'm getting caught with the slavery in the South. So um well, it does it's a little complicated because again, the citizenship was not something that the slaves, alleged slaves, called out for. It was something that was cooked up. I guess we have to really get into what was the outcry of the South? You know, um, and that's what would make it begin to make some sense because if you have a South where you need these indentures, why would you want to scare them away with the Ku Klux Klan and all of that stuff? You see what I'm saying? But we must keep in mind that it was the civilized tribes that had these slaves. It was not, the South was not a black and white slavery. It was the civilized tribes that had slaves. Part of me believes that these were the Negropeans having uh Indians work on their own land. Negropeans might want the indentures to be chased away with the Jim Crow. Jim Crow doesn't make sense when you take into consideration that the slave owners were the civilized tribes, the Choctaw, Chickasaw, Creek, Seminole, and the Cherokee. They were slave owners. But Jim Crow was happening to the basically those who were seen as slaves. So, what was happening to the Negro slave owners? They being Jim Crowed. See, ladies and gentlemen, how convoluted this story is. I just think we live in a lot of deception because it doesn't make sense. It was the civilized tribes that were in the South. Now, I don't know if that was their land, though. See, that's my thing is I don't think the civilized tribes were real Indians. I think they were like the guy Amenhotep told us. He said they were Moors. Amenhotep told us straight up the five civilized tribes were Moors. That's what he said. He said what he said, and he is one of them. He wasn't talking as an outsider. He was talking as someone who is part of the Washita Nation, which was basically the five civilized tribes. He said the five civilized tribes are Moors. So if we go with his assessment, what he's saying is the five civilized tribes were the ones who enslaved American Indians or had them as indentured. So that's how we can close this scenario out. I think that's legitimate. We read the Amenhotep Chavez El Bey document. He says it was the Moors that created this republic for Moors and Europeans. So who is the slave, ladies and gentlemen? If the Moor created, now the Moor is black, right? If he created a two-system government, who was the slaves? It was the Indians. It had to be Algonquins, ladies and gentlemen. The civilized tribes are basically Iroquois and Muskogee, and they're secondary. They're not first contact. Who is the real problem in this equation? It's the Algonquins, first contact. So who's going to be made slaves? It's going to have to be the first contact, y'all. They're going to be made indentures, but the indenturehood was meant to be like a permanent slavery. So that's where the confusion for me comes in, because if the slave owners were Indians, then Jim Crow doesn't make sense. So it had to be a couple of things. It was, you need them to do the land until the Industrial Revolution. And then you really don't need them anymore, and you need them gone. These are the civilized tribes that don't really need the indentures, and they don't want the indentures to inherit their land back. Then they say it was the Cherokee that go on a Trail of Tears. It's just not making sense. Who are they trying to remove is the uncivilized Indians. They want the civilized tribes right where they are so that they can claim that land through the civilized tribes. That's why somewhere in my looking into this, I started to realize it can't be that that was the civilized tribes' land. But again, we have the history of wherever a Moor goes, soon after another race will take him over. This is what I believe happened in the Americas. The Moor is here as sort of a transfer facilitator. He's there to trick those who are being supplanted and basically facilitate the like terraforming of a land to where it is now Caucasian. Now the Moor willfully surrenders to Caucasians. Indians don't do this willfully or willingly, because we know that this is our land. We can't just give it to somebody else. But those who are looking for a scapegoat, they willingly change the face of the land from a black to a white or a Mongolian. So Indians would never just, if they stayed, in other words, ladies and gentlemen, these Indians did not go with Indian removal. So they have to find another way to remove them. The Indian removal started in 1830. And we are looking at I guess waves of removal. So if we were still in the South after 1830, they had to try a different way to get us to leave. Um, we're gonna have to look into that, ladies and gentlemen. But right now, let's just continue with this list. Okay, so we're still with the first guy that's born a slave in South Carolina, learned to read despite restrictions. on educating enslaved people, became a successful businessman after emancipation. You can become a businessman, but you won't ever own land the way an American Indian is supposed to own land. Free and clear, able to rent and basically be like a real estate mogul. I mean, we're not here to sell our land, but we should be able, with all these people that so desire to leave their country. When we left, we paid rent. When we left the South, we had to pay rent. Yet a foreigner will come here, leave their landmass, and we don't get no rent. We don't get no compensation for them coming here when we own this land. Again, when we left the South, we were put in a situation where we had to pay to live on our own land. We should not be paying to live on our land. If so many people find it so desirous to live here, they're supposed to be renting from us. And it won't be a permanent thing, ladies. It can't be. Nobody just sells their land, but that's what they had us doing, allegedly. I don't think we had a choice because, again, they had the doctrine of discovery. They want to take this land come hell or high water, with or without your consent. Free persons did not have anything to lose. American Indians had everything to lose. That's why you got to stop associating yourself with free persons of color. You got to see your situation for what it is so you'll know how to get the hell out. If you're a free person of color, you're confusing yourself. You're getting a lot of different narratives. And there's only one narrative for American Indians: genocide. Historical significance. Um, Benjamin, forgot his name already, was elected to Congress from Alabama in 1870. Spoke on economic justice and education. So his name again, it's like a real picture too. Benjamin Sterling Turner. That's a real picture. Next, we have Robert Carlos DeLarge. Lord, Lord, this is not a Negro. 1842 to 1874. I mean, it's a form of some kind. Well, they said Adam Clayton Powell was a Negro, kind of, sort of. Hmm, hmm, hmm. Background: born free in Charleston. Okay, so he's a uh, no matter what, if we were Indians, once we took on this free person thing, we became foreign. So, born free in Charleston, South Carolina, active organizer in Reconstruction policy, politics, helped encourage political participation among freedmen. Oh boy. Historical significance: he was elected to Congress in 1871, election later contested and overturned. Oh, he was elected, but then the shit was overturned. Represents the political turbulence of Reconstruction. So wait a minute, how long was this stuff? Because it sounded like he didn't make it. Well, no, 1842. Well, wait, 18. Is that his lifespan? 1842. Wait. Oh, maybe that's how long he lived, because he was elected in 1871. Okay. So that's their lifespan, and then their election isn't. Okay. So next is Josiah Thomas Walls, 1842 to 1905. That's their damn birthday. I thought that was uh, their time of service. Now this is look like a whole brother. Okay. Okay. Born enslaved in Virginia. Worked under Confederate authority during Civil War, later joined the United States Colored Troops. Historical significance. First African American elected to Congress in Florida. Now, he was born in Virginia, ended up in Florida. Okay. Advocated education and economic development. Later became a respected farmer and educator. So here's our, Josiah Thomas Walls. Okay. Okay. Next is Jefferson Franklin Long, 1836 to 1901. Oh, is that a signal he doing right there? Hidden hand shit? Were these all Masons? Well, the other ones didn't have their hand hidden. Okay, so homie's showing us his. I'm part of secret society, man. Really don't. These little secret society shits really kind of detestable. Background: born enslaved in Alabama, worked as a tailor, became active in Republican politics after emancipation. Historical significance: first African American representatives from Georgia. First African American to speak on the House floor. Ah, when you're a secret society, you get to speak on the House floor. Defended voting rights and equal political participation. This is our first little secret society member, I guess. Joseph Hayne Rainey. Any relation to Ma Rainey? 1832 to 1887. Nope, he don't look nothing like Ma Rainey. Okay. These sideburns, just these sideburns though. Ugh. Joseph H. Rainey, South Carolina. Background. Born enslaved in South Carolina. Obtained freedom before the Civil War. Lived in Bermuda during part of the war. Historical significance: first African American elected to the U.S. House of Representatives. Served from 1870 to 1879. So once you become part of the Republic, you're not American Indian, you're African. That's why you can't be part of the Republic. Some Indians don't give a flying crap about that, and some of us actually do give a hell of a damn about that. We don't want to genocide ourselves. Again, some Indians don't care because they believe in the system that has been oppressing them, and they just love being oppressed. They think if they just get in the system, yeah, now you're not an American Indian. You're officially a Negropean or an African slave. So he served from 1870 to 1879, and he's one of the longest serving black congressmen. Oh, 9 years of Reconstruction. Robert Brown Elliott, 1842, 1884. Born in England. Okay. Bonafide Nairobi. Received a strong formal education. Became a lawyer. Oh, he, he really went the whole gamut. And political leader in South Carolina. Historical significance among the most accomplished orators of Reconstruction. Delivered influential speeches supporting equal rights. Strong advocate of the Civil Rights Act of 1875. The group as a whole. These 7 men entered Congress during the Reconstruction era, roughly between 1870 and 1875. Several had been born enslaved, while others had been born free. Together, they symbolized the political transformation that followed the abolition of slavery and the adoption of the 13th, 14th, and 15th Amendment. The famous 1872 print was intended to celebrate their election to national office and remains one of the most important visual records of Reconstruction era political leadership. So then we want to look at the original picture of these guys, and here it is. These are the first colored senator and representatives. They're not Indian, they're colored, right? You have to give up Indian, and when you get involved in their politics, you're advocating for all Indians to be genocided, basically, because you're not representing them. Indians are not represented in Congress. So if you're in Congress, who are you representing? Negropeans and everybody else that comes to this country uninvited by any American Indians. So this is the website that we plugged into ChatGPT when we asked for more information on these guys. But here, let's look at one more overview. So this picture, here it is. This will probably be our thumbnail. That's all of them together. The first colored senator and representatives. So the guy sitting here, I believe, is the senator. And these are other representatives. Hiram was the first, Hiram. Here he is right here. And Benjamin, I think that was Josias. I forgot his name. I forgot this name. Forgot their name, didn't it? This is the Englishman sitting over here. Is that your republic that you had Negro peeing wannabe American Indians? Well, you had them for a short time. Um, so what? Oh, this is 3 pages. Okay. So created circa 1872 by the Currier and Ives Lithography Company. The first colored senator and representatives is a combined portrait of the African Americans. See, that's what they're going to start calling you Indians when you're part of the Republic. Is a combined portrait of the African Americans that were elected to serve in Congress following the Civil War. So after the South surrendered, here pops up these guys. They represented the southern states of Alabama, Georgia, Florida, Mississippi, and South Carolina. During the early part of the Reconstruction era, there were 17 African Americans serving in Congress, 2 senators and 15 representatives, starting with Hiram Rose Revels, who was first elected in 1870 to fill a vacant Senate seat for Mississippi. Some may be surprised by the title of this image. The image is a snapshot in time. Although today we would not use the term color to describe these political leaders. During this time period, this term was used. Looking back at this image gives us the opportunity not only to see the great advances celebrated by the presence of these African Americans in Congress, but also to consider how things have continued to change since then. From left to right, Senator Hiram Rose Revels, 27th of September, 1822, January 16th, 1901. A freeman and Methodist preacher, Revels became the first African American to serve in the Congress as a senator after filling the vacant seat for Mississippi. Congressman Benjamin Sterling Turner, March 17th, 1825 to March 21st, 1894. A former slave and self-made businessman, Turner was the first African American representative from the state of Alabama. During his tenure, he focused on restoring peace and repairing economic damage to the war-torn South. Congressman Robert Carlos DeLarge, 15th of March, 1842 to February 14th, 1874. DeLarge was a former slave and tailor who represented the state of South Carolina. He supported a bill that would provide amnesty to Confederates, but had strong feelings that loyal black and white Southerners should be protected from terror and prosecution. South Carolina. Okay. Congressman Josiah Thomas Walls, 30th of December, 1842 to May 15th, 1905. A former slave and sawmill worker, Walls became the first African American to represent the state of Florida after fighting many political battles. He spent a lot of his terms fighting to provide that he belonged in Congress. I'm sorry, to prove that he belonged in Congress. Congressman Jefferson Franklin Long. Like Robert Carlos DeLarge, Long was a former slave and a trained tailor. He taught himself to read and write and represented Georgia in Congress. He only served in Congress for 3 months, but during that time, he was the first African American to speak on the House floor in objection to the amnesty bill. Congressman Joseph Hayne Rainey, June 21st, 1832 to August 1st, 1887. A former slave and barber, Rainey was the representative of South America. Okay. I'm sorry. I have first official trail off. We were reading Congressman Joseph Hayne Rainey, June 21st, 1832, August 1st, 1887. A former slave and barber, Rainey was the representative of South Carolina during Reconstruction. He is known as the first African American to serve in the House of Representatives, the first African American Speaker of the House, and the longest serving African American lawmaker during Reconstruction. Congressman Robert Brown Elliott, August 11th, 1842 to August 9th, 1884. Elliott was a freeman and an associate editor for the South Carolina Leader who represented South Carolina in the Congress. He was a great orator, had a photographic memory, and dazzled most observers. During his tenure, he fought for civil rights. This collection represents the hope of the 13th, 14th, and 15th Amendments for the former slaves and freed. It was the beginning of the beginning of the Constitution, living up to its promise for all of its citizens. Even though the dream was deferred, this combined portrait is a record of a proud moment of real progress. So I think, oh man, did we bring it? We didn't bring up one of the documents we want to look at. Darn. Um, wanted to, okay, so we got through the list of fascinating, incredible Negroes. And they had to give up, if they were Indians, they gave that up to serve the beast in quote unquote republic. So Indians want their own thing. We don't want an English thing based on English law, okay? For whatever reasons, these men, if they were American Indian, except for the one born in England, I guess, they traded that to have uh, a little bit of authority in the Republic. But again, American Indians, at our core, we are landowners and we are the landowners of the Americas. These men could not be that outside of some kind of commercial system, unlawful transaction with the United States acting as if they're the owners of our land. So there was something I wanted to look at. It's not flattering, but it's the truth. Let's see. Okay, this might be it. Okay, so this is another version. This is 13 pages, but we have to go to the bottom because we want to find out. Well, we read about this, each one of them: Hiram, Benjamin, Robert, Josiah, Jefferson, Joseph, Robert, Brown. Okay, okay. So four of them were born as slaves, three were born free, several served in the Civil War, all were elected during Reconstruction. Their elections followed the adoption of the 13th Amendment that abolished slavery, the 14th Amendment, citizenship and equal protection, 15th Amendment, voting rights regardless of race. They were supposed to give me a poster, but they didn't. We were going to do like a chart, but ChatGPT needed more. They needed pictures to do that. They wanted me to find a picture. Okay. I asked, thank you so much. May I ask who replaced each of these men after their tenure? I asked for a chart. Okay. I'll say we're gonna skip because then I was curious as to the the race of the replacements, and I just found that interesting. Okay. Where after Reconstruction, who followed the first black members of Congress? Yeah. We asked for, yeah, this is what we want to see. uh, I wanted them to show me who their replacements were. They were the first African Americans, and I was wondering how that worked out at that time. So their successors, all but one, were white. And I just thought that was interesting. This is part of a republic. Um, in China, Chinese people run their government. In England, English people run their government. They tend to be Caucasian looking. In Germany, German people run their government and they look like Germans. In Africa, Africans, I don't know exactly what they're doing over there, but they are in seats of power. They look like the people. Governments are allowed to have their own people running stuff. In America, American Indians hardly had any position in this republic. Well, number one, we didn't create it. That's why, that's the main reason why. Um, when the Moors spearheaded all these other racial groups, the Moors would leave, and then that's how the lands would turn white or Mongoloid. The Moors would leave. Why? Well, they were creating basically those who they're going to use against American Indians. Now, the Moors come to America, and none of the leaders in this government look like American Indians. Hardly. It's a mixed bag with mostly white people running the like say the role of president. You know, America is the one place where the original people do not run their government. But Indians feel like, well, if we take over the republic, then we can run stuff. You didn't design the republic. As you see, I guess you're going to keep the Constitution. Uh, the Constitution does not specify, well, it actually, yeah, it doesn't specify. I guess other constitutions don't specify race, but in this system, it has only been run by foreigners, but it was created by foreigners. See, that's the part we gotta meet. In those other countries, did they create their own government? Or did they, you know, are they going by English law? Is Germany going by laws of England? That's the problem. When you're a sovereign people, you don't go by other nations' laws. So this is another strike against this republic. We did not create it. Well, anyway, we just want to look at who succeeded these first men. In the case of Hiram Revels, James L. Alcorn was his successor, and he was white. Now, I'm thinking Hiram, Mississippi was mostly people of color, but look what they get after Hiram leaves. Uh, oh, here's another one, Blanche K. Bruce. Now, they didn't show us that person, I don't think. His successor was James Z. George, and he was white. Joseph Rainey, we saw Joseph Rainey. His successor was John J. Hemphill, he was white. Robert B. Elliott, his successor was William Beverly Nash Lee, he was white. Robert Smalls, his successor was William Elliott, who was white. Jefferson F. Long, his successor was Thomas Jefferson Spear, he was white. Benjamin Turner, Benjamin, Benjamin Turner and Jeremiah Harrelson. That's the only successor that was black. Josiah T. Walls, Horatio Bisbee Jr., a white replacement. So those were the black leaders, the very first, and then they go right into white. The Elliott and Long successions are somewhat complicated because of district changes. So elections and redistricting. I'm sorry. Let's read that again. The Elliott and Long succession are somewhat complicated because of district changes, special elections, and redistricting. But the men who followed them in those congressional seats were white. Summary: 7 of the 8 Reconstruction era black leaders listed were ultimately succeeded by white office holders. Benjamin Turner was the notable exception, being followed by Jeremiah Harrelson, another black congressman from Alabama. This pattern reflects the broader political changes that occurred as Reconstruction ended and black political representation in the South declined sharply. Yeah, I was trying to get them to give me a version, but they didn't. For some reason, ChatGPT, I think they're trying to make folks pay for graphics. Yeah, so you ask for it to make a picture, and then it stops and says, "Well, to make any more pictures, you got to get a new subscription or something like that." Um, yeah. So, ladies and gentlemen, I think we're going to close here. The main point is that these men, if they were American Indian, they had to give that up to serve in the foreign republic. So, but Indians will have to do their own legwork to basically um what did I just do? Uh-oh. Oh, I stopped the screen share, did I? Oh, we did want to look at I had this other thing here. Oh man. I forgot that I had this, y'all. This is what we were going to look at. But we read all about them, so you could just pause. These were the first African American members of Congress, pioneers of Reconstruction and equality. Yeah, no, not for American Indians. We were not supposed to be not supposed to be part of this. These 7 men were among the first African Americans elected to the United States Congress following the Civil War and the adoption of the Reconstruction Amendments. They look a little different here. Okay, so yeah, you can pause if you like. Just a recap and maybe closer pictures. Yeah, it's basically everything we already read. So I don't really feel like reading all of this stuff because I'm starting to talk foolish because I'm tired. Um, I don't know if we should make that the thumbnail. Some of them look cross-eyed in this or something. Uh-oh, I saw lightning. Okay. Oh, I heard thunder. Okay. Well, ladies and gentlemen, I completely forgot that I had this uh slide and so sorry that we didn't use it. Um 'Cause it has them all, lined up. We could, read about them and see them at the same time. So yeah, these were folks that could not be American Indian and partake in a republic. Indians are not represented in a republic. They become foreign when they step into a republic. So, so, yeah, ladies and gentlemen, sorry we didn't get to this slide, but I tried to leave it up so if you, in case you want to read it on your own, please pause. We did go through most of these main points already, so I think we can close out. Uh, yeah. Thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video. Again, ladies and gentlemen, we just want to always reaffirm we have to have our own separate identity. We can't mix with people of color who are don't share our birthright. And we have to value our birthright enough to not just be willy-nilly with it and keep confusing ourselves with free persons. We are not free persons. We are not free persons. We are not free persons of color. So again, on that note, ladies and gentlemen, I think we're going to call it a day for now until next time. Be and stay American First Contact Indian. Thank you again for watching. I hope this was enjoyable and you got something out of it. Till next time. Uh, peace and American Indian sovereignty.